Thank you, my friend. Good morning, everyone. Isn't it a beautiful day today? Why don't we all go outside and just enjoy it for a minute while it lasts? It's so great to be with you and to look at God's Word. It has been so enjoyable to look at the book of Deuteronomy. What we've been saying is that this is the instruction manual for how to receive God's promises. That God had a future for his people, and so he wrote down, these are the things that you need to know if you're going to walk in the promises that I have for you. And so we're spending quite a bit of time going through this book because we think it's so important. They want to go through each section and understand what God is saying to us. And so today we're going to be looking at the idea of multi-generational vision, which kind of answers the first question: what is the vision of the book of Deuteronomy? Is it simply a change in location, that they were in Egypt and now they're going to be moving into a new place? What's going on? Well, the vision, I think, of the whole book is summarized in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 1. It says this: "These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you," this is Moses speaking, "to observe in the land that you're crossing the Jordan to possess. So that," and that's the big words, "so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord." What's going on here, this land of promise, is not just a new place. It's not as though if you and I were to move to some other city and location, that's the promised land. That's the thing that God has in store for us. I think it's more profound than that. It's not just a change in weather or the kind of trees that are, in this place. There's something more significant going on, and it's this: that God pulled them out of Egypt, brought them into a new land so that they could understand how to have a society that is multi-generational in its faithfulness to God and love for one another. It couldn't have happened in this old place, so he needed to carve out a new land that there could be multiple generations that would live in the peace and joy of the Lord. What a much more robust vision than just a new location. You and I know that simply a change of address doesn't necessarily change much. But wow, to be part of a society that has a new vision, a new God to worship, and a new sense of community, well, that's transformative. So, I think about this idea of multi-generational vision, and I think of what the trend is in the world today. I was reading that, and again, you just, I don't know, my knowledge will quickly run out. But in South Korea, as an example, they're saying that the country might go bankrupt in 20 to 30 years. And the reason for that is that the population is getting older and there's not a high enough birth rate to support the country. And so they don't think that they're going to be able to have enough people to populate the jobs that are necessary to keep everything running and to take care of all of these people who are getting older. And they say that the situation they might not be able to turn it back. Well, I think that this is true really around the world, isn't it? That when people think about having children, they might have children because they go, well, I like kids. But what even dissuades them from that is that, do I really want to bring, new lives into this world? When we look at where the world is going, is it really worth it? Is it worth it economically? I just don't think that we could afford it. It sounds like a great idea. So whether it's fears or just a personal vision, it seems as though in society people are moving away from the idea that a fulfilling life is actually to birth and to care for succeeding generations. I think it's hard to make sense of Christianity if the only generation that we're thinking about is our own. It becomes a smaller faith, something that is more about us than anything else. And so I think that what God would want to do this morning is to give us a bigger vision for our lives than just what's going on inside of us and our own personal future. So the question that we want to ask then is, how do parents, which is what these verses are primarily about, but can I also say mentors? So anyone who has a desire to invest in someone other than themselves. So if you don't have kids, this sermon can be as much for you as for those who are parents. But how do parents or mentors bless the next generation? We're going to look at three things that if we want to have this multi-generational vision, what does that look like? Well, the first thing is to have a clear purpose. Now, the chapter 6 of Deuteronomy is a big passage for the people of Israel. It's called the Shema. And because it begins with, hear, O Israel. And Shema means to hear, to listen. So this passage is really a summary statement for what the people of Israel rallied around. So it's a very big deal. And here's what's said in verse 5. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. And then that's put in the context of the Ten Commandments, and we know in Matthew 22 that can be summarized as to love God and to love your neighbor. The thing that motivates the investment in the next generation is that they would be people who would love God and others. Now this immediately gets tricky. How do you foster love in another human being? And so this is what I think has happened in my life, and maybe it happens in yours if you have kids or you're trying to care for others, is that we try to invest in something that's a little bit more tangible. And so we'll say, this is what happened in my family. My mother had a grade 10 education. My father had a grade 9 education. And they said, we want something better for you. And so that's why I have 14 years rather, not degrees, of post-secondary education, because they said, it wasn't an option. You're going to do what we weren't able to do. And so that's what I did. But, we're going to give you a good education. And then our parents want their children to have a good career, something that allows them to make enough money to be able to have a comfortable life. Those things are much more tangible, aren't they? I mean, you can picture how you're going to help your kids get an education or get a good career, or really just be a nice person. That's easier to think about. Just make them good. Now, when I grew up, I just want you to know I was a good kid. I've told you the story before. I think I touched a cigarette once, and it really was hard for me. I felt so guilty. I didn't smoke the thing. I just touched it, and I was already feeling guilty and confessing it to my pastor. But I was a good kid, and here's why. We had a number of foster children living with us, and they weren't good kids. They got into all kinds of trouble. And I looked at their life, and I go, that looks hard. I'm going to choose that road. And the reason why I chose to be good had nothing to do with love. It just looked like a better life. You don't get punished nearly as much, and it seems to go well for you, and there's near the amount of conflict. So I'm a good kid for purely selfish reasons. And that's very possible. It's very possible to raise a next generation that's simply good. I was thinking about this. We have our 25th church anniversary coming up. And okay. I mean, that moved me. That was beautiful. So we have, so what I know about churches is that in the first number of years, it's quite exciting. And if you ever want to be part of an exciting church, just be part of a new one, because that's super fun and it's all new and everything's we're starting from scratch and we're going to change the whole world and we're going to do it right this time, I did that once and it wasn't that right, but felt like it in the moment. But you have, it's typically going to be led for the first 20 or so years, typically, by kind of the founding leaders. Now, what happens is you have to give that out because you get this thing called old. And so you have to give it away to the next generation. And here is the tricky part of that, is that when you try to transition to give it over to a next generation, it's easy to give over a structure. It's easy to give over behaviors. How do you give over love? Like, how do you ensure that love becomes the foundation for the next generation and what they're going to be building? That is much more difficult. And so you'll often see after that founding generation, the next generation runs a nice church. And that church eventually fades because the motive of love has been lost in the vision. So how do we do this? Well, we already talked last week that you can't scare people into love. You can't force people into love. Listen to what Steve Morrill says. He's the president of Every Nation. And he has 3 boys. The title of his book is First, Second, and Third Attempts at Parenting. That's the name of his book on parenting. It's a great book, by the way. Listen to what he says. The worst idea of all is to assume that controlling external behavior is real parenting. Every act of parenting should be about shaping our child's heart, not about controlling their behavior. Why would we do that? It's easier. Just stop it. And then when they stop it, they go, my work here is done. They stop the thing. We can do that in discipleship. Just go through the program. Would you just do the thing. You just go to establish and then equip and just do that. And then I'll feel good that I made a disciple and you got the stuff. But to call people into a life of love is a trickier thing. Of course, we care about behavior and we care about those things. We'll talk about that later. But how do we foster in other people a life of gratitude and generosity, which I think is what love is mostly about? How do we actually do that? Have you ever tried? It's a big deal. So that's the purpose. The purpose is to love God with our whole lives and for their whole lives, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So, given that impossible, purpose, what's the priority that Scripture gives us that leads us toward that? Well, it's in the next verse. It says, "These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts." What if the priority of parenting, just is not their heart, it's our hearts? What if that's the biggest thing going on? I think, as we've already said, that it's just easier to make parenting about the child. It sounds like, of course we should do that. We have to care for them. They're living beings that need help. But what if the best gift that we can give them is not somehow trying to fix them and make them better? What if what's really going on is they're actually reacting off of who we are? What if that's the thing? It's kind of a cheeky quote, but I think it's funny. Susan Peters says this: "Children have a much better chance of growing up if their parents have done so first." I think isn't that great? We're still working on it, right, Debbie? We're almost grown-ups. Any minute now. What's the point? The point is that our children react off of who they see us being. You've maybe seen me do this thing where if you ask somebody to put up their hand and you push against them, they push back. And the idea is that people we react off of one another, and the harder we push, the more they resist. And if you've been a parent, you know that that's true. The harder you push for conformity, the more they resist that. And so parents just think, well, I guess I just need to discipline harder and break their will, like you would, break a horse to, kind of idea. And we just need to push harder. But we know in Scripture that our character is corrupted by who we're around. We know even the way that we dress, you can often tell what crowd, someone belongs to, what culture they belong to, just by the way that they dress, because we're always living in reaction to others. We always are. And so what if the bigger thing that's true is the behavior of our children is a reflection of their relationship with us and what they think about us? What if they're living in reaction? And if we stifled them and just made them behave, we would actually be missing the point, because their behavior is a symptom of the relationship. This is what we've discovered to be true, Debbie and I, in our parenting, is that in our home, the anxiety and kids acting out in our home would increase when we were anxious, when we weren't doing well. And when the kids feel unsafe, or whatever it would be, they then react off of that. And so what was convenient, if you're a parent, what's convenient is you just start fixing their behavior so that you don't have to look at your own. Because that's disturbing. I mean, who wants to do that? And so we'll just fix you, but really miss the point that they're reacting off of us. I think that one of the primary qualities of a healthy disciple maker or a healthy parent is the ability to be self-aware. One of the things that I would often have to ask my children is, how are we doing? And what do you see in me? And I have to be able to ask the question so that I focus on my love for God before I start trying to correct their love for God. I think this is a fascinating point. So, how would your kids, if you're a parent, how would your friends, if you're trying to reach out to others, how would they describe you? What words would they use to describe you? Well, whatever that is, whatever those words are that they describe you with, that's what they're reacting off of. And the way that they will change is if you become a different person for them to react off of. Can I say this? It's the most direct way to change someone else is by being a different person for them to react off of, not by fixing them. I double dare you to change someone. You can't change people. The Spirit of God can. I can't. All I can do is be a better person for them to react off of. All right. So our purpose is love, called impossible. The priority is our hearts, not theirs. What now, given that, what's the plan? Next verse. Impress them. These are the 10 Commandments, the call to love God and to love others. Impress these on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. In other words, talk about faith and love all the time. Let who you are infect your relationship with your children in all that you do with them. What this doesn't mean is make every moment a teachable moment. I mean, if you want to watch any kid's eyes roll, just say, honey, this is what we're learning now. One of these. All right, do your thing. And then I can go back to thinking happier thoughts, you know. Teachable moments almost never work. Parenting books say that children learn out of the corner of their eyes, not in what's directly in front of them. They see what you're doing. They see how you're behaving, how you're handling life. That's shaping them more than the lesson that you're trying to teach them right now. My parents, my dad was sick when I was 5 or 6 years old, is when he was first diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I don't remember having a relationship with him. I remember 2 talks that we had. That's not a lot. But growing up in my home, we always had people coming and living with us, always. They were foster children. They were people who didn't have a place to live. And so they would just come and live with us. And I would complain incessantly, as a good, selfish child. Why do we always have to have people, living with us? And the heart of my parents imprinted something on my heart that I could never shake, nor do I want to. And so Debbie and I have practiced an open door life simply because it's what my parents did. And they never told me to do that. There was never, this is what you should do with your life. It was never like that. They changed me, not their lessons. So what we do is we build a relationship. We build a relationship with faith and with love. Okay, I think what I'm about to tell you is the most important thing that we can do as parents or disciple makers. And it's simply this: to enjoy our children. I think that's the most important thing that you can do. If you enjoy your kids, I can't guarantee it, but almost can, that it's going to go well if you enjoy your kids. Every time I've been an unhealthy parent, what happened just before that moment is I stopped enjoying my kids, and I got frustrated with them. And I made the moment about me, not them. And I forgot that I loved them. And then I said and did things that I still regret. We enjoy them. I remember a woman that I was working with in the previous church that I was serving in. She says, Greg, do you know who likes us? That's a good question. Who does like us? She says, whoever we like. Whoever we like likes us. I've never forgotten that. If there's somebody who doesn't like me, it means they think that I don't like them. I think this is true. I think it's true. And so I've noticed there's some people that don't like me, like one. There's hardly anybody who doesn't like me. But somebody doesn't like me. You know what I discover? I didn't like them first. I mean, that's a sad thing to realize. I go, I don't like you. Oh, that's why you don't like me. So then I just have to like you, and then you'll like me. And I can't tell you how often that's true. It's just crazy. I decide in my heart that I'm going to enjoy them, And then the relationship goes better. Because people can smell whether you like them or not. They can just tell. And our kids can tell. Our kids can tell if we're mostly annoyed. They can just tell. And as soon as we decide to enjoy them, and delight in them, that's what the Sabbath is to delight in God, to enjoy to stop working on parenting and just to enjoy our children. When that happens, everything else follows very nicely. There's a quote this is my favorite book on parenting. It's by a fellow named Gordon Neufeld. He wrote it with Gabriel Mattei, who some of you might know. I think he's getting a little bit more popular. He lives in the city as well. Gordon Neufeld is a Christian. He's spent most of his life helping families with foster children. And he has a video series called Transplanted Children. His book is great. And this is my favorite, I can hardly wait to share it with you. It's my favorite quote on what parenting is. All right, here we go. Just please be in awe, because I really like it. And then take a picture of it, because I think you might like it. Parenting is a relationship, not a skill to be acquired, not a behavior to be learned, but a connection to be sought. If a child is bad, it's the relationship we need to correct, not the child. The hardest part for many parents is to shift the focus from behavior to relationship. That is incredibly profound. And that changed my life, changed my parenting and my understanding even of what discipleship is about. It's building a relationship. It's not fixing, controlling, managing behavior. And it is the hardest thing for a church, for a parent to do, is to shift the focus from behavior to relationship. Now, here's what was challenging for me in that regard. Well, lots of things you can imagine. But one of them was, I thought that if I made the priority relationship, then that would mean that I'm kind of buying into compromise. I'm not really calling my children to righteousness and to follow the truth and to sacrifice for God. I thought that if I'm just making it about some mushy, I love you, you love me, let's play Duplo, that I was going to kind of miss the more robust vision of raising godly children. That I thought that. What that mostly spoke to was my gross misunderstanding of what relationship is. That relationship has difficult moments. It works things through. It's not always easy. But it's not what we're hoping for, which is loving godly children. It's how we do it. And the way that we do it is we take steps into relationship. Look, the primary parenting model that's found in most homes, and if I can speak particularly to men, it's ignore, 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 explode. Ignore, 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 explode. And you just try to ignore their bad behavior. And finally, you're killing me. I'm trying to watch the game. And so I discipline you. I didn't do that. That was an accident. I discipline you. And so I can get back to ignoring you. And then when you do something that's too much, then I explode again. And that's usually the parenting model. And if I say no to ignoring and no to exploding, what's left is investing in the relationship. And I know that when they're not doing well, it's the relationship that needs to be corrected, not the child. And so their misbehavior is always a sign for me, oh, they're feeling insecure. They don't feel safe here. They don't know if I love them. And it becomes an invitation to take a step closer into our relationship with them. It's the how. Now, I just find that to be the most beautiful thing in the thought of parenting and discipleship. Most of my kids now are in their 20s and 30s, and they're getting up there. And don't make it that funny. They're here in the audience. So, they're my best friends. And there's no greater reward in my life than to be friends with my kids. And I can't tell you how precious this is to me. And you and I know that it's a testament of their godliness, not mine. We all know that. But I'm so grateful that we've decided to build a relationship together. And then you get to see them have children. And you watch them building a relationship with their very newborn children. Not ignoring and exploding, but coming close and caring. And maybe that can be a blessing to this city. In conclusion, here's what it says in verse 20. It's how this section ends. It says, in the future, when your son asks you, what is the meaning of the stipulations, decrees, and laws the Lord your God has commanded you? I mean, what a great question. I mean, this is, in the future when your son asks for you, why do I have to be good? That's what it's saying. Like, what? Why? Why the Bible? Why do you always, just tell me again what's going on here. Now listen to the answer. We were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. We were oppressed, beaten. It was a land of idolatry and debauchery. And we were rescued out of that place. And the Lord commanded us to obey all these decrees and to fear the Lord our God, so that we might always prosper and be kept alive as it is to this day. All that stuff that you can think is heavy of the law, God's trying to create a safe place for me and there we go. And their children, God has tried to carve out a place where peace and joy can thrive. That's what's going on. This isn't about religion. This isn't about a whole bunch of rules. This is about God describing love so that our relationship with him and with others can thrive. This is what's going on. Don't you long for that in your homes? Don't you long for that in your relationships? Don't you long for that in this church community? That this is what we would be about. So let me ask you then in closing. Is your vision of faith and love multi-generational? Is it? Is it just about you being good and trying to live a life of faith and love? I mean, that's a beautiful thing, and that shouldn't be looked upon in a negative way at all. But what if we could have something more robust than that? That isn't you and I hanging on. I remember my ethics professor at Regent College saying that some people describe the Christian life as a train traveling through the country that's been sealed off, and it's just trying to make it to the end. Like, is it just about us making sure we get to heaven? What if it's to build a life that's multi-generational, that we live with a much bigger vision of why God has brought us to this place at this time? to bless others with a more robust purpose, to do it with a heart that is not just about fixing them, but wanting to love them and love God, and to do it in a way to have a plan that isn't just about jumping through hoops, but is actually investing in them for their benefit. What a meaningful life. That it's not just trying to amuse ourselves or keep ourselves good, but having a vision that doesn't just transform us or even our families, but the world. Can I just say one thing parenthetically at the end? And I've alluded to it, but that's what this church is for. It can be easy to say in the future when your son asks you, why do we have to go through establish and equip? And what's the purpose of communities and D groups? Could you just say that again? Because sometimes I look at that and it looks like I'm trying to please you to do the stuff you like me to do. I can appreciate that. What if those things aren't to serve the church, whatever that is, the leaders or something? What if that's to serve you? What if that's for your benefit to help you flourish? That the laws and decrees are so that we can live and prosper in this land, as you see is the case today. That what if that's the thing that's going on? And so my greatest hope, and certainly my greatest joy, is that we would have families